Liberal Industry Minister Navdeep Bains, as he was then, appointed a personal friend of Justin Trudeau as chair of SDTC. Since the appointment of that individual, a cloud of gross mismanagement, fraud, and corruption has descended upon SDTC.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. It really makes you wonder when the scandals are going to stop erupting from this Liberal government, because it really seems as though there is something new every single week.
This has become a very big problem for Trudeau because every single major polling firm has the Conservatives over 40% in polling numbers, and the Liberals at least 14 points behind them.
And given the fact that this affordability crisis is what the Conservatives are focusing on, this has resulted in their consistent rise in the polls. This latest Liberal scandal could not have come at a worse time.
We are talking about the $1 billion Green Slush Fund scandal.
So what is this all about? This scandal is centered around an organization which is given lots of money by the Government of Canada. The appointed board members have been accused of taking money from the government, ignoring conflict of interest regulations, and giving that money to their own companies. This organization is known as SDTC. So what is that? SDTC stands for Sustainable Development Technology Canada. Here is how they describe their mandate.
Sustainable Development Technology Canada, or SDTC, is Canada's largest funder of clean tech entrepreneurs. You may think clean technology only focuses on areas such as wind and solar energy, but it goes much deeper. Any technology that has environmental and economic benefits can be considered clean tech, from using data to improve crops to analyzing traffic conditions. Clean tech is all around us. If you're an agent for sustainable change, join the fight for a cleaner Canada.
So what they are supposed to do is fund projects that have the potential to yield significant and quantifiable environmental and economic benefits. Sounds great. So what is the scandal about?
The scandal centers around allegations that some projects were submitted for funding were done so by the entrepreneurs with close ties to the agency's management and board. Because of this, those entrepreneurs received preferential treatment. In some cases, companies that would not have required taxpayer money to fund projects were granted funding anyways, despite the fact that they were already generating revenue and raising large sums of money from the private sector. So where does this all start?
In order to answer that, let's go back to the committee meeting on November 2nd, 2023, while Michael Barrett is questioning Deputy Auditor General Andrew Hayes.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, for being here on behalf of the Office of the Auditor General this morning. This issue has obviously captured a lot of media interest and public interest in recent days, and I understand that your office has been engaged on it for some time. Can you tell us on what date your office first communicated with the whistleblowers?
So I believe that our first encounter with the whistleblowers was in November 2022. There was a number of meetings between November and January with the whistleblowers. A presentation was made to our office. Information had been shared in November, December, January. Would you like me to continue with what happened after that?
Yeah, well, I guess I'd like to find out what your advice to them was, and then maybe if we need to look back at any of that previous timeline, we can.
When we receive information from any party, that information is taken into consideration as we determine what our audit priorities are going to be. In this case, with the information that we received, given the nature of the organization of SDTC, and particularly with Governor and Council appointees, we reached out to the Privy Council office, senior officials there at the end of January, early February. The Privy Council office turned the matter over to ISED. And I guess I should say that when we engaged with the Privy Council office, it was to make the connection between the whistleblowers and the Privy Council office. The Privy Council office turned the material over to ISED, and then ISED had carriage of the file after that.
So why wasn't an audit initiated when this was first brought to your attention. It's since been evidenced that there has gross mismanagement has occurred at Sustainable Development Technologies Canada. So why didn't you initiate an audit at first?
So the allegations that we have received, we have to recognize that SDTC, the foundation, is more arm's length than the normal department that we audit. We do have a mandate to follow funding agreements, and that's what SDTC has with the federal government. In our view, at the time, it was preferable to see what management's response was going to be to the allegations, and then for us to keep our eye on it and determine when or if an audit would be appropriate.
Okay. Have you seen the fact-finding report that was precipitated by this referral to PCO and later ISED, the report by RCGT?
Yes, we received a copy on October 3rd. I've reviewed the redacted version. I know that our team has an unredacted version.
So there we have it. The whistleblowers ended up submitting a 300-page complaint to the Auditor General's office in November of 2022. They reviewed it, but they had more pressing priorities by the sounds of it, so they forwarded the matter on to the Privy Council in January of 2023. In turn, the complaint was then turned over to the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, or ISED. Who is the minister responsible for that, you might ask? Well, that would be none other than François-Philippe Champagne.
Once that was done, Doug McConaughey, who is the Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Deputy Minister, or ADM, took over. He, in turn, contracted a law firm to conduct an investigation to the tune of $300,000. The law firm in question was Raymond Chabot Grant Thornton, or RCGT for short. McConaughey tells the whistleblowers that the investigation is bearing fruit and that many of their allegations have raised red flags. Before we go any further, we need to give you a little more background about the organization. You see, the organization was started in 2001 under Jean Chrétien, but the Liberals don't like to mention that aspect. All they have been saying is that this organization existed during the Stephen Harper years, which, that's true, it has. In fact, everything they were doing was above board until 2017, as confirmed by the Auditor General's office.
Mr. Hayes, in answer to a previous question, you noted that the Auditor General had conducted an audit of SDTC, a report that was issued in 2017 and covered the period between 2006 and 2017. I would note that in that report, the Auditor General found that at the time, SDTC had a, quote, rigorous and objective processes in place to assess, approve, and monitor projects, end of quote, and, quote, had measures in place to mitigate potential conflicts of interest, end of quote, and had, quote, extensive due diligence process, quote, end of quote, that was followed. Do you have any reason to doubt that the Auditor General was given inaccurate or incomplete information to draw those conclusions?
No, I don't. So if I could just make two comments about that. If we ever have concerns about access to information or the sufficiency of information, it's our duty to bring it to Parliament. And I know that in this case, at the time I was the head of our legal services, there wasn't an issue around that. If I might just add one thing, I'll put it this way. Positive conclusions in our audit report are even more concerning to me, frankly, because when we find positive things, we want to make sure that there's no negatives that might be hiding. So when we report a positive to Parliament, it's because it's positive.
These are very important points that Andrew Hayes is making because they directly refute the comments that Champagne has made repeatedly about the SDTC existing during the Stephen Harper era.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to answer any and all questions that this member would have, Mr. Speaker. But let me bring the facts to the story, Mr. Speaker. By the way, this organization existed 10 years during the Harper government, Mr. Speaker. Let's bring some facts to the table.
Hayes is effectively saying that the SDTC operated with impunity during the Harper era, all the way until 2017 when they performed their last in-depth audit. This testimony reveals that problems with the SDTC have only surfaced recently under the Justin Trudeau government, which is why this is such a problem for them.
Since that audit, Liberal Industry Minister Navdeep Bains, as he was then, appointed a personal friend of Justin Trudeau as chair of SDTC. Since the appointment of that individual, a cloud of gross mismanagement, fraud, and corruption has descended upon SDTC, and I would submit that that is supported by the RCGT independent report.
In June of 2023, McConaughey meets with the whistleblowers and has a conversation that they hoped would happen, but probably didn't expect. The concerns they had raised were justified. The allegations were rooted in truth, and there was evidence to support it.